Okay, I told you these shocks really don't have any oil in them out of the box. So it's really easy to put some oil in these shocks. Just pull back on the spring here with your fingers a little bit, and then just push this piece forward a little bit, and there's just a little slot in that piece that allows it to fall right off, and you can just pull the spring off of the shock. After you do that, just unscrew the top piece of the shock, take that off, take the little rubber seal off the top of the shock, set those things aside. Make sure the bottom is screwed on nice and snug so your oil doesn't leak out when you put it in there. And just grab a Q-tip, and like I said, there's nothing in this shock. Just clean the grease out, because they will put a little bit of factory grease in there just to keep it from drying out, I guess, when it's in shipping. So just take a little cotton bud and clean out the shock on the inside. And once that's just wiped out and nice and clean, then just take your shock oil, and this is some 50 weight shock oil that I got at my local hobby shop. It cost me 10 bucks plus tax right at my local hobby shop. So visit your hobby shop and they'll be able to direct you in the right direction for some oil for your shocks. Now, it does come with a little cork thing in the top, so you'll need to take that out before you can put the oil in your shock. There we go. Now I should be able to just fill this shock up a bit. We'll put some oil in there until I see it getting toward the top. And then I'm going to push this piston from the bottom up, and then wait for a minute, and then when I can see the oil's gone down a little bit, I'll pull it back down. That gets some oil underneath the piston as well. And then I will continue to fill this up until I can see the oil. And that might be a hair too much. You know, it's good to have a cotton bud because you can just soak some of that out of there if you've got just a hair too much in there. Now, I'll just replace this little rubber seal on the top and screw down the little aluminum cap on the top of the shock. Make sure it's nice and snug, top and bottom. Put your spring back on, pull it back with your fingers and hold it in place. Grab this bottom piece that has that little slot in it, push your rubber O-rings up, push the slot on there, and seat it on the bottom part. Allow your spring to go around it, and your shock is now an oil-filled shock, and it's going to have a lot better rebounding and a lot better control on your car. Now, when I hooked these back to my car, I also chose to put them in a slightly different hole in the rear end, giving the suspension a little bit more ground clearance, just so it doesn't grab a hold of the ground and it gets over the deep grass a little bit better. And then you just mount this back up here and you'll be good to go. And then if you'll notice, this ring is here is at the top as they come at the factory. I have snugged this ring down, giving this suspension a little more resistance than it came with at the factory. So all I have to do now is figure where I want to put this, and then grab my shock screws and put them back in to the holes where I want to screw the shock back into. If you want to put them back into the screws, same holes that they came out of, the factory setting, that's fine. It seems to get you up off the ground just fine. It's just a little close to the grass. When you get into deep grass, it does slow the car down a little bit. So we'll just reconnect this shock at the top, and then we'll put the bottom screw back in, and this is where I'm going to change the setting just a little bit down here on the bottom, and this is going to allow me a little better ground clearance than what the car initially came with. So we'll line that hole up just with a little different hole than it came with factory. Put that screw in there. Tighten this up. Now again, when I was visiting my local hobby shop getting this nice 50 weight oil for my shocks, I also did pick up this nice little tool set made by Holyton. It's got a whole bunch of little tools that you can just very easily slide into the handle. The handle is ratcheting, so it just turns one way, and then you change it and it turns the other way, which means you don't have to let go of it to keep turning it the same direction, which is really nice and handy. This cost me $30 at my local hobby shop. So now that I've got my shock on, I'll just take this adjustment ring here, and I'm just going to screw this down, until it matches the one that I've screwed down on the other side, because I think I've got a fairly decent shock setting there. So those look about even now to me. So that shock is reconnected. It has oil in it now. And as you can see when I push on the chassis, this car, it has a lot more resistance in the shock. And when I push it down, it bounces up, but it doesn't just bounce all over the place. It's got a lot more control to the car. It's going to keep the wheels on the ground better when you're going over bumps, and it's going to allow you to steer the car where you want it to go a lot better. Thank you very much.